Hello. Today, we will trace one of humanity's simplest yet most profound inventions: a bar of soap. When we hold it in our hands, it is not merely cleanliness we encounter. It is the silent, enduring memory of civilizations. From antiquity to the present, soap has symbolized not only hygiene, but also health, culture, and social transformation. The journey between dirt and purity, the historical meaning of cleanliness. When did humanity first feel the need to be clean? The answer illuminates not only the history of hygiene, but also the evolution of culture, belief systems, and even class distinctions. Cleanliness was never a simple physical act. It was a layered concept representing identity, intention, and social status. In early societies, the notion of being clean did not arise from an understanding of microbes. Germs had yet to be discovered. Yet dirt, both visible and symbolic, was well understood. Filth was not only physical, it was associated with the soul, behavior, spaces, and intentions. Consequently, cleanliness was often ritualistic. In ancient Mesopotamia, people bathed in rivers before sacred ceremonies. Contact with water was less about physical hygiene than about purification from sins. Similarly, in ancient Egypt, priests bathed several times a day, cleansing their bodies with aromatic oils to prepare themselves for service to the gods. In these early civilizations, cleanliness was a key to aligning oneself with divine order. But purification rituals were not exclusive to the East. In ancient Rome, public baths served not only for washing, but also as centers for socializing, conducting business, and forging political connections. Cleanliness had become a way of life. Yet this Roman cleanliness was far from sterile by modern standards. It was scented, oily, and ceremonial. For thousands of years, water remained the universal symbol of purification. Yet water alone was not enough. Other substances entered the equation: ashes, clay, salt, animal fats, and plant extracts. These mixtures were rubbed against the body in an attempt to remove dirt. Humanity had not yet invented soap, but it was laying the path toward it. What stands out is this: cleanliness was not always accessible. The time, water, and materials required for bathing were seldom in the hands of the poor. They were mostly controlled by the elite and the clergy. Thus, cleanliness became both a moral and a social privilege. When soap finally appeared on this historical stage, it would not only cleanse bodies, but also reshape social hierarchies, cultural meanings, and personal identities. The first traces of soap. From the Sumerians to ancient Egyptians, soap was not invented all at once. Across different regions and eras, it was repeatedly discovered under various names, yet always following the same fundamental formula. The science behind soap was simple, but its impact was revolutionary. Fat plus ash plus water. This mixture produced a substance that began to transform not only human bodies, but also societal behaviors. The earliest soap-like compounds appear in Mesopotamian civilizations. On cuneiform tablets, roughly 5,000 years old, left by the Sumerians, there are records of substances created by boiling animal fats with plant ashes. These mixtures were primarily used to soften and clean woolen fabrics, suggesting that soap's first function was industrial rather than personal hygiene. Yet this was not merely a textile technique. Over time, it was realized that such compounds could also purify hands, bodies, and even intentions. In other words, soap first cleaned fabrics and then extended its function to human beings. Similarly, in ancient Egypt, soap-like substances were employed. The Egyptians prepared special mixtures not only for physical cleanliness, but also for ritual purification. These were composed of animal fats, alkaline solutions, and aromatic plants, and were especially used by priests. Appearing dirty before the gods was considered both a physical and spiritual flaw. Thus, soap-like mixtures held high symbolic value within the religious hierarchy. One of the clearest examples approaching a chemical definition of soap comes from Babylon. Clay tablets dating back to the 2nd millennium BCE contain recipes describing the dissolution of ashes and fats in water. These are regarded as the first standardized soap-making instructions. They show that soap had become a repeatable knowledge, documented for the first time beyond oral tradition, forming a written scientific formula. However, these early soaps were very different from the products we are accustomed to today. They did not lather, had no pleasant fragrance, and their color and texture were often dull and hard. Yet they were effective. Each civilization adapted these soap-like substances according to its needs, beliefs, and technological capabilities. Some used it as a tool for purification, some as a status symbol, and some as an industrial material. All of this demonstrates a critical insight. Soap was not a singular invention, but an intuitive discovery independently realized across cultures. Its rise illustrates that humanity's understanding of cleanliness evolved not only physically but also culturally and symbolically. The Romans, bathing culture, and the first encounter with soap. The Roman Empire shaped history not only through roads, law, and architecture, but also through cleanliness and bodily culture. However, the Roman understanding of hygiene does not perfectly align with modern notions of sanitation. For the Romans, cleanliness was not merely a health measure, it was a way of life. Roman baths, thermae in Latin, were not solely spaces for washing. They functioned as centers for socializing, exercising, discussing literature, and forging political alliances. Rich or poor, nearly every citizen spent part of their day in these vast public spaces. The baths were places where water met aesthetics, and the body engaged with society. Yet despite this comprehensive bathing culture, soap did not hold a central role in Rome for a long time. Instead of soap, Romans relied on olive oil and a metal scraper called a strigil for cleansing. They would rub oil over their bodies and then scrape away the oil along with accumulated dirt. This method was considered less about hygiene and more about a ritual of bodily purification. Soap existed only at the margins of the Roman world, According to the elderly Pliny, the Gauls and Germanic tribes combined animal fats with wood ashes to create a soap-like substance. However, this mixture was primarily used as a hair dye or medicinal ointment rather than a cleaning agent. Roman culture had yet to recognize soap as a legitimate hygiene product. Some accounts suggest that soap reached Rome by chance. During animal sacrifices on Mount Sapo along the Tiber River, fats and ashes mingled with the soil, and rainwater carried the mixture into the river. Women washing laundry in the river noticed that the water now cleaned stains more easily. This event marked the first popular recognition of soap's cleaning properties. Yet, this observation did not immediately lead to scientific production. In Rome, soap gradually and cautiously found its place, first as a medicine, then as a perfume, and eventually as a cleaning product. This transition was slow, as Roman culture revered the nobility of water and oil in cleanliness, while viewing soap as a coarse, unnatural substance. Nevertheless, with the fall of Rome, the knowledge of soap was not lost. On the contrary, through the roads, books, and trade routes left by Rome, soap would travel from east to west, taking shape in the hands of Arab chemists and eventually returning to Europe. Soap in the Middle Ages, from the Arab world to Europe. With the fall of Rome, Europe experienced not only a political decline, but also a significant cultural and hygienic regression. Baths closed, established cleaning habits were forgotten, and soap nearly vanished into the mists of history. Meanwhile, in the East, the rising Arab civilizations took soap in a completely new direction. This era marked the first time soap encountered systematic science. Its production became organized, and it transformed into an instrument of societal change. The Arab world did not merely inherit the legacies of Greece, Rome, and Persia. It synthesized this knowledge into a new scientific framework, which in turn influenced soap production. Soap was no longer an accidental mixture, but a carefully measured substance, produced through controlled processes. In the 8th and 9th centuries, cities such as Baghdad, Damascus, Kufa, and Nablus became centers of soap production. Unlike the animal fats used by the Romans, olive oil was the primary ingredient. Olive oil made the soap softer, longer-lasting, and more pleasantly scented. Additionally, production incorporated sodium carbonate, ashes, aromatic plants, and basic solutions. The resulting product was not only a cleaning agent, but also a symbol of beauty, health, and social status. Arab chemists were the first to not only manufacture soap, but also formulate its recipes. Al-Razi documented the precise ratios and mixing times required for soap, while Ibn Sina described its effects on skin health. Soap now appeared not only in popular usage, but also in medical texts. Among the most notable soaps of this period was Nablus soap. Made from pure olive oil, cut into molds, dried, and aged over time, its scentless, natural, and durable qualities elevated it to a kind of commercial icon within the Arab world. Nablus soap became a staple not only for local population, but also for kings and royal courts. Through Mediterranean trade routes, these soaps eventually reached Europe. During the Crusades, European soldiers brought back the soaps they encountered in the East. However, in Europe, these soaps were perceived as luxury goods. For a long time, soap remained an elite import, rare, expensive, and accessible only to the nobility and clergy. Europe had encountered soap, but did not yet know how to produce it. The knowledge behind soap remained in the hands of the East, and it was more than a recipe. It was a reflection of chemistry, hygiene, and civilization itself. At this stage, soap had transcended its role as a mere hygiene tool. It had become an object of cultural knowledge. Over time, this knowledge would pave the way for the Renaissance's transformation of European hygiene practices. The Renaissance and the rise of soap, a new era of cleanliness, emerging from the shadow of the Middle Ages. Europe in the 15th century began to think anew, to question, and to produce. This cultural awakening is what we call the Renaissance. However, the Renaissance was not confined to art or science alone. It also signaled a revolution in the perception of the human body and in the culture of cleanliness. At the center of this transformation was a product whose value was finally recognized: soap. The rebirth of soap in Europe occurred primarily in Mediterranean port cities. In trade hubs such as Marseille, Savona, Naples, and Venice, soap samples brought from the East were carefully analyzed by local producers. These cities quickly became new centers of soap manufacturing. Among these, Marseille soap gained particular renown. Made from olive oil, fragrance-free yet effective, it represented a European adaptation of the techniques developed by Arab chemists. Soap was now used both in private homes and in royal courts. Even more importantly, its production was for the first time standardized. In France, the 17th century Colbert Decree stipulated that Marseille soap must be made solely from pure olive oil. This regulation signaled that soap had now received state recognition, and its quality was formally assured. What had once been a foreign and expensive commodity transformed into a local industrial product. With the Renaissance, soap became not merely a cleaning tool, but also an emblem of ethics, aesthetics, and social status. Scented soaps were sold in specially designed packaging, and royal courts began assembling soap collections. Cleanliness was no longer dictated solely by fear of disease. It also became a marker of personal elegance and modernity. During this period, soap played a significant role in cultivating societal hygiene awareness. Hand-washing habits were promoted in churches and schools. For the first time, soap became accessible not only to the aristocracy, but also to the emerging middle class. Thus, soap evolved into an instrument that cleansed not only the body, but also the social structure. Yet, the Renaissance understanding of cleanliness was not grounded in modern scientific hygiene. The existence of microorganisms was unknown, and the causes of disease were often misinterpreted. Nevertheless, the widespread adoption of soap inadvertently curbed the spread of infectious diseases, laying the groundwork for modern public health practices. In summary, with the Renaissance, soap transformed from a luxury item into a public good, from an Eastern tradition into a Western symbol, and from a simple mixture into a standardized chemical product. This transformation reflected not only the evolution of soap itself, but also the shifting human perspective toward the body and personal care. The Industrial Revolution and the mass introduction of soap. By the late 18th century, the world was witnessing one of the most transformative periods in human history. The Industrial Revolution. Steam engines reshaped cities, factories belched smoke into the sky, and every aspect of daily life was fundamentally altered. Among the many products transformed by this revolution, soap was no exception. No longer confined to the hands of artisans, soap had entered the rhythm of machinery, becoming an industrial product produced for the masses. First, the scientific basis of production changed dramatically. In 1791, French chemist Nicolas Leblanc made a groundbreaking discovery in soap manufacturing. He developed a chemical method to produce sodium carbonate, commonly known as soda ash. This innovation freed soap production from reliance on expensive ashes and natural resources, allowing standardized formulas to be manufactured in large quantities. For the first time in history, soap became a mass-produced, economically accessible cleaning material. By the 19th century, soap production had become a major industrial sector in countries such as England, Germany, and France. Factories emerged, workers were employed, and raw materials were transported by ships. Soap was no longer merely a cleaning agent. It became part of an economy, a branch of industry, and a sector of the chemical trade. Yet this transformation was not limited to production alone. The meaning of soap itself was evolving. Luxury soaps, once available only to the aristocracy, were now within reach even in rural towns. Cleanliness was no longer a privilege. It was becoming a societal norm. Governments actively supported this shift. In some countries, soap taxes were abolished, and public distribution of soap was encouraged to safeguard health. Promoting hand washing became one of the most effective measures against epidemics such as cholera, dysentery, and typhoid. Yet this habit could not have spread without the widespread availability of soap. Meanwhile, soap manufacturers were not idle. Major companies such as Lever Brothers, today's Unilever, and Procter & Gamble not only produced soap, but also developed branding strategies. Bars of soap took on distinct shapes. Fragrances were added. Colors were introduced. Packaging became elegant. Target audiences were carefully defined. Soap was no longer just a cleaning product. It had become a product defined by who it served and how it was perceived. And advertising. By the late 19th century, soap advertisements began to fill newspaper pages. Cleanliness was linked not only to health, but also to morality, elegance, and female identity. For housewives, being a proper mother meant keeping children clean with soap. Women's bodies, homes, and hands all were reshaped through soap. The Industrial Revolution transformed soap in multiple ways. It introduced soap to the masses, refined it through scientific methods, gave it meaning through marketing, and turned it into a mirror of society. Soap no longer merely removed dirt. It became a marker of social class, a carrier of culture, and a standard of civilization itself. The face of hygiene in advertising, soap, women, and the power of media. Following the Industrial Revolution, soap was no longer merely a product of factories. It began to appear everywhere. On newspaper pages, posters, women's magazines, shop windows, and even in children's books. Soap was marketed not merely as a tool for cleanliness, but as a symbol charged with meaning. At the center of this symbolic marketing stood one figure, undeniably, the woman. By the late 19th and early 20th centuries, women were no longer defined solely by their domestic roles. They were becoming visible as consumers with distinct identities. Advertisers strategically placed women at the heart of soap marketing campaigns. The notion that being a good mother, a clean spouse, or a respectable lady required the use of soap was propagated intensively. In these advertisements, women were typically portrayed as elegant, pristine, well-groomed, and smiling. These images reinforced societal expectations, subtly reminding women of the duties assigned to them: to keep their homes, children, spouses, and, of course, themselves clean. During this period, hygiene was associated not only with health, but also with morality, discipline, and social class awareness. Advertising campaigns targeting mothers were particularly influential. Slogans such as "A real mother washes her child with soap" not only popularized hygiene habits, but also reshaped cultural definitions of motherhood. Soap thus evolved into more than a mere physical cleanser. It became a cultural norm setter. Brands were not simply promoting a product, they were promoting a lifestyle. Transparent or scented soaps were portrayed as symbols of civilization. Colonial European brands took this even further, presenting soap as an emissary of Western values. Cleanliness was equated with progress and superiority, and soap distribution in colonies was employed as a tool to civilize local populations. In this way, soap became an ideological instrument. Media played a central role in this transformation. Women's magazines overflowed with soap advertisements, and pages dedicated to hygiene included not only promotions, but also advice columns and how-to guides. Women were cast in the role of the modern conscious consumer, with soap as the principal instrument of this identity. Over time, soap brands learned to forge emotional connections with consumers. Mother's Day campaigns, child-themed soaps, nostalgic packaging, and perfumed varieties. These initiatives transformed soap into an object of emotion, not just utility. Advertisers realized that soap could cleanse not only physical dirt, but also social expectations, class identity, and perceptions of womanhood. In short, this era redefined the purpose of soap. You are no longer merely soap, you are a bearer of messages. Soap and collective memory. Scent, cleanliness, and remembrance. Every person carries within them a memory tied to a particular soap fragrance. The scent of a grandmother's bathroom, the laundry day of childhood, the morning in a military barracks, or the sterile smell of a hospital. Soap does more than cleanse. It recalls. In this way, it stands as one of the quietest, yet most powerful carriers of collective memory. Scent is among the stimuli that elicit the fastest emotional responses in the human brain. The fragrance of soap is often associated with cleanliness, safety, health, and the past. A single soap scent can transport us decades later back to our childhood, to our mother's hands, or to the school desk where we first learned. Soap, therefore, is not merely a physical product. It is a bridge across time. Some soap brands deliberately exploit this emotional connection. They maintain the same scent for decades, avoid altering packaging, and emphasize the beauty of the past in their advertisements. They understand that soap does not simply clean, it fosters a sense of belonging. It remains one of the rare objects that one can say, "My mother used this." Soap also occupies a place in public memory. During wartime shortages, the absence of soap symbolized not just a lack of hygiene, but also widespread poverty. In some countries, rationed soap distributed through government systems became a collective memento of economic hardship. Conversely, periods marked by abundant production and the proliferation of scented varieties became associated in memory with prosperity and comfort. Soap is also inseparable from ritual. Bathing is not just about physical cleanliness. In many cultures, it signifies purification, renewal, and spiritual cleansing. Bathing with soap before a wedding, washing hands with soapy water at funerals, or cleansing a newborn with soap for the first time. These are all examples of soap's symbolic as well as physical use. Soap can be a gift, a farewell token, or a reminder. In some families, soaps are still kept in cupboards, untouched, because each bar represents a memory, a person, a time, a feeling. In short, soap is not merely a chemical mixture. It is the essence of cultural memory, individual recollections, and collective history. A scent of soap can sometimes convey more than the pages of a book ever could. The invisible value. Soap's universal message. Today, soap may appear as an ordinary household item, yet behind it lies a silent but profound transformation in human history. From the earliest civilizations, people devised various methods to meet their need for cleanliness. However, soap transcended this practical necessity, gradually becoming a symbol of civilization itself. Soap does more than maintain hygiene. It is intricately woven into concepts of health, awareness, modernity, social equality, cultural transmission, and personal care. What began in ancient Mesopotamia as a simple cleaning agent eventually, with the Industrial Revolution, evolved into a shared value across societies. Today, soap fulfills the same essential role in the poorest villages and the most luxurious hotels alike. It protects, cleanses, and heals. Moreover, soap has silently witnessed numerous societal transformations. Its contribution to combating epidemics, its role in shaping women's identities as consumers, its elevated value during wartime, and its continued centrality in contemporary hygiene education, all attest that soap is far more than a mere object. Soap has been refined through science, cultivated by culture, and over time transformed into a symbol carrying a universal message. In the modern world, soap remains profoundly significant. During health crises or pandemics, it resurfaces at the forefront of public attention, demonstrating that soap cleanses not only physical impurities, but also societal uncertainties, personal anxieties, and historical challenges. Behind its seemingly simple composition lies a complex web of meanings. Soap is no longer just a cleaning product. It is a mirror reflecting humanity's consciousness, its cherished values, and its collective approach to coexistence. Every time we look into this mirror, we see not only ourselves, but also the societal memory shaped by soap throughout history. Today, we have traced the millennia-long journey hidden within a single bar of soap. From Mesopotamia to Rome, from the Arab world to Europe, from factories to modern homes, soap has been part of a journey that wipes away not only dirt, but also the dust of time. Soap is not merely a simple cleaning substance. It is a quiet carrier of civilization, health, culture, and memory. When we hold it in our hands, we do more than cleanse ourselves. We connect with the past, experience the present, and gain a sense of security for the future. Perhaps this is why one of humanity's greatest inventions is not water, not fire, but soap. Because soap does more than purify the body, it reveals us in the mirror of civilization. Soap, seemingly simple, yet in truth, it is humanity's mirror of civilization.